Well, KU loses in Madison Square Garden in the Champions Classic against Duke without Darryn Peterson. Was it bad? Was it good? Let's talk about it. This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer along with Kevin Flaherty. A live edition of the show, our first KU basketball live reaction show on our YouTube channel. If you're joining us right now live, first of all, thank you, because it is a bit late on a Tuesday night after the Champions Classic between KU and Duke. If you're here, you should do three things. You should like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also drop a comment in our live chat. We love hearing from great KU fans. And hopefully you guys enjoy hanging out with us as well. So if you're listening after the fact on audio, of course, you can subscribe there as well. Leave us a 5-star rating and review, do all that good stuff as well. I really appreciate everybody joining us. If you're tuning in tonight, thank you so much. Kansas loses 78-66 against Duke in Madison Square Garden in the Champions Classic. It was a game that, quite frankly, just to get right to it, Kevin, it was a game that if you have Darryn Peterson, you probably win, is my assessment, which I think is both good and bad, right? Like, I guess it's good in that, okay, that means that, hey, everybody else kind of played, I guess, their roles, right? And versus it's bad in that you didn't have Darryn Peterson, and late in the game, you didn't have anybody that was able to step up and really hit any sort of shots. Kansas had it. It was 69-64. KU was down 5 with 3:28 left. Duke comes out of a timeout with 2 seconds on the shot clock, hits a three, and it just kind of felt like that was it for Kansas. Then it really just came down to some desperation perimeter shooting from KU at that point. So I guess that's the negative side. That was kind of my just big takeaway at the end of the game is, okay, great. You were there. You were in it with a really pretty good Duke team, and you just didn't have anybody to hit any shots late in the game. You didn't have anybody that you felt like you could get to for a clutch shot, which was the bad part. The good part is Darryn Peterson exists, and hopefully he'll be back on this team and he'll be able to fill that role. But obviously, in the microcosm of this specific game, it was frustrating to see KU fight so hard for 37 and a half minutes, and then in the final 4 minutes of the game, when we've seen Bill Self teams in the past be able to close those games out or continue to fight there, Kansas just kind of ran out of gas. Also, there was a lot of foul trouble that contributed to it as well. But what was your, I guess, general takeaways from tonight's game?
Yeah, tremendous moral victory for Dave. I'm sure that Dave is super fired up for us to talk about that. But no, in all seriousness, this is a game that was winnable, right? It was there. You loved a lot of things about it. You loved the fight and the scrap. And, Nick, there was a moment where they flashed to the huddle. I think it was at the under 8 timeout. And Bill Self is talking to the guys. And Flory has this giant, grin on his face. And, just the vibes difference between, where it was, these guys were having fun playing basketball. But ultimately, Nick, too many fouls. And if you're Flory, you can't commit a foul that far away from the basket. You can't give away free throws at certain spots that they gave away. Cam Boozer got a very light whistle in terms of, not getting whistled for pretty much anything that he did. But it all came down to, Melvin Council hits a three to cut it to within 3. And you're sitting there saying, okay, this is what you wanted, right? Throw everything else out the window before that point. You are within 3 points of Duke. You are in a winnable situation. Now go win that game. And what we've always said, Nick, is the formula for this team is for them to defend, scrap, show mettle, and then at the end of close games, you're putting the ball in the hands of the best player in the country with a chance to create for himself and for other players. And that's a formula that's worked in college basketball. We saw it with Kemba Walker and UConn, and we've seen it at different points with different guys. Ultimately, in this situation, though, Nick, you get to a spot where it's a winnable game late, You wind up with a couple tough Melvin Council outside looks. You're not really getting the sort of shots that you want to get in those situations. And Kansas had hung around by driving and getting to the rim and making Duke rotate and then attacking downhill. They got away from what got them there. And I don't want to say anything bad about this team's toughness because I think the toughness was good, but there's a mental toughness. And part of being mentally tough is having the discipline to generate the sort of shot attempts that you want in the final minutes of a close game. And Kansas really didn't do that. Council was great for a stretch. Trey White, unbelievable for a stretch. Flory had great moments when he was able to be out there on the court. There's so much to be encouraged about, but in those final 5 minutes, when you had a chance to win this basketball game, you didn't generate the shot attempts that got you there and kept you in the game in the first place.
I really enjoy Philip's comment here. Can we talk about Melvin Council? He's the only guy with the mentality, but it's almost a bad thing, which I think is hilarious because I actually do kind of agree with that. Like,
yeah,
in the first half, he was really struggling. I think in the first half, he was 1 of 8 from the floor, I want to say, if I could have the splits there, but he was really struggling shooting the ball. And then in the second half, as you said, he had a great stretch where he ends up hitting a couple threes, I think. He hits it 1 3. Did he hit 2? I'm looking at the box.
He hit 1 3, and then he hit 3 floaters / layups.
Yeah. So he had a stretch in the second half where he couldn't miss, right? So he was either really cold in the first half or then really hot. And then at the end of the game, he was just kind of throwing up some shots. So, yeah, I kind of agree with that take. Like, I think Melvin Council is somebody who can be that guy, but not on a night in, night out basis, right? And he's somebody that clearly wants to be that guy. Like, he wants to be somebody that can do that. It's just maybe not, the skill level isn't totally 100% there for him to be that guy on a game in, game out basis. So yeah, I liked what I saw from Melvin Council in the second half. He definitely has that dog in him.
He also played 37 minutes in a big game in November. And we've talked on this show, and you've made a really good point about it, Nick, talking about how when Darryn Peterson is in, it helps him so much to have Melvin Council basically take bullets off of Darryn Peterson, right? When he's bringing the ball up the court, when he's initiating the offense, that's taking mileage off of Darryn Peterson's legs. But it works the other way too. You saw Melvin Council have a lot of mileage on his legs tonight because he didn't have other guys to really jumpstart the offense, to bring the ball up the court, to do all of those things as well. And so I wonder a little bit if he was starting to wear down late in that game too.
I think John's comment sums it up as well. It seemed like we got tired in the second half, weren't moving the ball around nearly as quick and couldn't find stuff on offense. Yeah, the offense, I think, really got bogged down, kind of what I was mentioning earlier. I think Derek Ho, who is fantastic, had a comment earlier. KU's last made field goal was, I think, with just under 5 minutes left in the game. So you go essentially the last 4.5 minutes plus of the game without making a field goal, right? And that's again, to me, that's like the frustrating part of this game specifically, but also in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay, who is a great clutch shot maker that KU could really use in those situations? Darryn Peterson, who hopefully will be back soon. So I think that's kind of, I guess, where I'm torn between two things when we look at this game specifically. It's like, yes, definitely you didn't have anybody that you could go to late in the game to score, but you do have that guy on your roster if he can get fully healthy and be ready to go, as you get closer to the end of non-conference play and into conference play. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But yeah, I think in the second half, definitely KU started to slow down a little bit. And then Duke went to his zone. And I thought, so Duke went to his zone, and the first possession KU had, there wasn't really much happening, and that was when Melvin Council hit that 3. And then on the next possession against the zone, they got it to Tiller in the high post, and he had a chance to either shoot, and he tried to throw like a lob to Flory, which I like the idea of the lob, but it didn't really work out, and they ended up not scoring on that. So I don't know, kind of hit and miss there, I guess. Seeing some people talk about Trey White. I think we should probably just talk about Trey White as well. Kevin, he's certainly built off of what we saw him do against Princeton, and he also stepped up and played at a very high level. 22 points in the game in total. Also had 9 rebounds, which led the team as well in 34 minutes. He was a guy that I thought really left it all out there and was probably KU's MVP for the night with what he was able to do and get to the basket. He ends up also getting to the line quite a bit in the game. I know that, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the officials either, but yeah, it was pretty tough. Both Flory and Tiller were getting some tough whistles, which really hurt them. Tiller ends up fouling out. You had both of them on the court with 4 fouls, basically from the 5.5 minutes onward towards the end of the game. Flory's 4th foul was picked up with 7.5 minutes remaining in the game. So that was really difficult. Boozer, as you mentioned earlier, Kevin, kind of got a much lighter whistle, it felt like, for Duke. So that was annoying to deal with, I guess. And obviously, I think if there was a game where you really couldn't afford Tiller and Flory to be in foul trouble, this would be the game, especially without Darryn Peterson, right? But back to Trey White.
Getting White in foul trouble, in that first half too.
Yeah. What do you think of Trey White, though? What do you think of his performance tonight?
I mean, Trey White was terrific, and there's guys talking about how he kind of reminded them of Jalen Wilson a lot tonight, and I see that, honestly. The way that he battled, the way that he got on the glass and was willing to sort of grab it and start the break too, and he was getting his points in a variety of ways. He was battling through contact to get to the free throw line. He made some shots. He did things a lot of different ways. And he was asked to do a lot defensively, Nick. And I thought that he really competed on that end too. That was, I realized that he missed shots down the stretch, but that was one of the areas I came away most impressed with. Jaden Dawson too. Jaden Dawson, I thought, had some good defensive moments. And I think that's important because when you look at why guys either get on the court or don't get on the court with Bill Self, that's a big part of it. It was pretty telling that he was on the court for some key moments. He actually started the second half. And so I thought Trey White was terrific. He was their best player. A lot of people will talk about the decision to pull out Flory and Tiller and White and kind of have the lineup out there that they had out there. I understand taking Flory out. Flory has a tendency to foul. He does. You put him out there for those final 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it was, he's probably going to pick up number 3. He's just not disciplined in that area just yet. When you look at Tiller, he's a freshman big, hasn't played that much, actually wound up fouling out anyway. I understand pulling him out. Trey White is a guy that I would have thought about maybe keeping out there, especially the way that he was playing, the way that you would trust him as a veteran. Trey White's played in a lot of big games over the course of his career, and he did bring him back out eventually in the first half. He didn't sit him the whole rest of the first half, but pulling all 3 of those guys out, I think really put them in a tough spot and allowed Duke to build a lead that they never truly lost. I mean, Kansas brought it down to 3, but that was a big part of the game, obviously.
Yeah, KU was up 26-20, I think, when Flory left and never came back in the first half. And from there, Duke ends up going on what? So 26-20. So that's Duke ends up going on a 21-7 run the rest of the half from that point forward. And yeah, as you mentioned, part of that was when you had Paul Mbia along with Jamari out there and Omarco, and it just didn't go well, right? And I think I can understand what Bill Self is trying to do in those situations, right? He's trying just desperately to buy that extra time, of not having the, it's like, okay, hey, you're down, you have a 5-point lead or it's, a close game, right? Just maintain that until we get to half, right? Like I understand the vision. I see what you're trying to accomplish there, but it just didn't work. And, I think Paul Mbia we saw tonight, it seems like he is pretty far away from being a legit contributor for this team. I mean, first of all, you watch him on the court and you understand why, he was someone who was a coveted player, right? I mean, the guy is 7 foot with arms that go past his knees. Like he is an alien out there for sure, but it's pretty clear that he's far away from being a real contributor just in terms of his game sense, being able to understand how to use his body and all those things. So, with that being the concern that it is, it does put a lot more emphasis on making sure that Flory and Tiller don't get into foul trouble, because Paul is certainly at this point somebody that you can really use only very sparingly. And in this game, KU really got burned by that at the end of the first half. And as you said, unfortunately, they never really got much closer, right? I mean, the second half was that was really my frustration with the second half was, man, it felt like KU was getting it to 5 points like consistently. They would get it to 5, get it to 5, get it to 5. And then Duke would hit a 3, or then Duke would get an and 1, or then they would score and it's back to 7, back to 8. KU would get it back to 5, back to 7, right? Like they just couldn't get it any closer than that. Then they eventually got it to 4, I think, but then it was the same deal. They got it to 4, then it was back to 6, got it to 4, back to 6. So they just couldn't never really get any closer. And then, as we talked about earlier, the end of the game where you're down 5 with 3:28 left, and that 3 from Evans from the corner with 2 seconds on the shot clock really felt like sort of the kill shot for KU, because they kind of just started panicking and didn't really have a response from the perimeter. And so, yeah, I guess that's the other takeaway is, man, the big situation is I guess more concerning than I thought it was in terms of the depth that you have there, because again, it just seems like Mbia is a guy that's not going to be able to be a real piece for the foreseeable future, like maybe even beyond conference play.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Mbia for the future, if you can convince him to stick around, I do think there's something to build on there. He's a guy that played lower level pro ball and did some good things there, but right now it's a hard row for him to hoe right now. Easy for me to say. I just think the speed of the game is so fast, and you're seeing some of the guys that Kansas has brought up from lower levels kind of adjusting to the speed of the game a little bit too. I mean, Melvin Council obviously has just explosive speed, is major conference level fast, but at the same time, he's getting contested on floaters and things like that, probably in a way that he hasn't really in the past. There's more guys there. Jaden Dawson, you're starting to see him find a little bit more confidence. It's taking him a little while. Mbia, it's going to take him probably beyond this season, I would think. Although at the same time, if you remember when Silvio came in, I mean, the game was super fast for Silvio, and he was even a U.S. guy. But for Silvio early in his time at KU, you're like, man, this guy is not going to get there. And then by the Big 12 tournament, you started to actually see things slow down for him. And so I'm not going to say it's beyond him, but at the same time, it is going to take him quite a bit before he's able to play in a game like this and impact it in a positive way.
Let's take a quick break before we get to some more takeaways from tonight's game. That gives us a chance to remind you that if you're a Chiefs fan, you could be on the field at the 50-yard line inside GEHA Field for the official coin toss of the Chiefs home game this season. Visit Chiefs.com/GEHA now. Enter for a chance to win to be on the field for a once-in-a-lifetime view of the pregame coin toss. And maybe you're just the good luck charm the Chiefs need, because right now, it ain't happening for them. Plus, you can score their exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at Chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is a proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. More KU basketball talk is coming up next.
Hey, NFL fans, what's your favorite touchdown? For me, it's the next one. And that's because with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, every touchdown could bring you closer to cashing in. First touchdown scores to anytime touchdown props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. And here's the best part. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. So your team hitting pay dirt pays out to you. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. Must be 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. The bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, visit dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition of the show tonight following KU's game against Duke in the Champions Classic at Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, the Jayhawks do fall to the Blue Devils 78-66. But we do appreciate all of those of you joining us tonight. And if you haven't already, you should be doing 3 things. You should be liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing a comment. By the way, look, we have Dave in the comments once again. Dave, we so appreciate you. You're like my favorite guy, number one supporter. Dave started off the show, Kevin, by claiming that we shouldn't be calling this a moral victory. Now here he is in the chat saying, biggest takeaway from the game is that if DP can stay healthy, this team has national championship possibilities. That sounds like a moral victory to me, Dave. But I don't disagree with that sentiment either, because I am also crazy. He says he's crazy smart. I'm crazy smart as well. Yeah, again, just to kind of circle back to kicking off the show, like that was sort of my takeaway from this game as well. Is like, hey, everybody, your supporting cast basically all did their jobs, right? Like played their roles. You were just missing a clutch shot maker / guy that could go make a dagger shot, aka Darryn Peterson. So that's what you're missing from this game. The 3-point shooting though from this game was really poor from Kansas. They struggled from the perimeter. Kansas, what were they? They just finished 4 of 21 from 3. Now I will say a handful of those were kind of just late game, throw ups basically when it was felt like it was already gone, but still. It does feel like for this team to truly reach its ceiling and into what Dave was alluding to about the possibility of playing deep into March and maybe even into April. Yes, you want Darryn Peterson, but it does still feel like you need a Jaden Dawson and or Cole Rosario as well to start shooting the ball well, right? Cole Rosario, I thought actually, especially in the first half, I thought Cole Rosario was phenomenal. He was making a lot of really good plays. He had also a dunk, I think, in the second half that was really sick, and had a couple steals in the first half. He was playing really well and doing all the right things, but it still just feels like they need him and or Dawson to become more 3-point threats. Plus, hopefully having Darryn Peterson back as well. That would really help. But I don't know. I've always it's kind of funny because I've always been the guy that's been like, well, 3-point shooting doesn't really matter that much. Like whatever, like just have a threat to shoot. In tonight's game, I think you could tell, though, that Kansas needed that perimeter threat, right? Because to what I said before the break, when you keep getting it to 5, when you keep getting it to 4, when you're stuck in that same area, an outside shot can then put you over the top and really launch you back into the game. So I don't know. Where are you at with the 3-point shooting for Kansas right now?
Yeah, you think about how well they got downhill with their driving stuff in the second half and how they were having a strong impact there. And they did that with guys in the lane, right? It wasn't like Duke was having to extend its defense. You see Jaden get the odd feet set in a good spot. The one that he hit from the baseline, obviously earlier on, was kind of like, okay, like that's what you're here for. Cole Rosario is still missing those. Like Derek said, he is rushing, I think, a little bit. I think when you look at why guys make or miss shots so often, Nick, it's a footwork thing. Like your feet need to be right. That sets up your timing. It sets up your balance, all of those things. And I think sometimes Cole Rosario is getting kicked the ball and the feet aren't where they should be yet, or he's kind of rushing into it. And so I think when you clean that stuff up, you're going to see him start to shoot a little bit better. Who actually had some similar issues? Malik Newman. And then Malik Newman went on to become like the most nuclear shooter in March that year. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Cole Rosario. I'm just saying that sometimes it can take a little bit of time for guys to fix that footwork part of it. And when they do, the rest of it comes along. And I think when you watch this game and you saw some of the times that guys got kicked the ball on the outside, whether it was Bryson Tiller, whether it was Cole Rosario, whether it was Jaden Dawson, there were opportunities there for them to make outside shots. And if those opportunities continue to be there, and you would figure they would, because people are going to have to play Darryn Peterson for the drive. They're going to have to play Flory Badunga for what he does under the basket. You're going to have to play Melvin Council for the drive. Those opportunities should be there. And like you said, if you knock a few more of those down, you're talking about a totally different game here, with or without Darryn Peterson, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. If a couple of those shots go differently, it could be a lot different down the stretch as that game, progressed. And I also agree with Dave again here. I definitely believe in Jaden Dawson. I
do too.
A lot of faith that he's going to figure it out, and that there might just be a game where it just clicks for him and he, catches fire and hits 4 or 5 threes. Like I pretty firmly believe that's going to happen. And then you've talked about this, Kevin, so I don't want to steal your thunder here, but you've said, Dawson has a chance to become sort of like a Curtis Jones for Iowa State, where he can come off the bench and basically just flame throw any given night, right? And I think he can get there. I think he can become that for Kansas if he's able to get a little bit more comfortable. With Rosario, I also have faith in Rosario. What I love from Rosario, though, is, and obviously this is why he's starting, Derek made that comment as well, that Rosario is doing everything else at a high level as well, and he has a ton of effort, right? We saw a little bit of that tonight with some of what he was able to do in terms of creating a couple turnovers. How many rebounds did he end up with in the game? Only ended up with 2 on the box score, but I thought he was doing a lot of really, really good stuff outside of shooting, right? So hopefully just in the flow of the game, maybe same thing for him. Eventually it'll click for him and he'll start to hit some outside shots as well, because that would be, again, really the final piece, I think, of the puzzle for this team, right? At this point, I think, okay, if you can guarantee that you're going to get the same level of production from Trey White, if you can guarantee that Flory is going to continue to build off of what he's been doing, and then you add in Darryn Peterson, and then you add in some of that three-point shooting from Cole Rosario and Jaden Dawson, then all of a sudden you start to see the vision for how this team can take that next step to becoming a second weekend, a third weekend of March potential team, right? If that all comes together. And as far as I'm concerned, I look at Trey White, I look at Floyd Badunga, and we'll see how it works once Darryn Peterson does get back. But I have all the confidence in the world those guys are going to keep doing what they're doing. Trey White looks to me like he's settled in, very comfortable, knows exactly what he's supposed to be doing. As you said, he's very experienced, and I think that plays a role into it as well. And then with Flory, he just gets into that mode, man, where he also can become like one of the best big men in the conference and maybe even the country at certain moments. And so if you can continue to get that level from him and avoid the foul trouble, that'll be, I think, the biggest issue with Flory.
Yeah.
He has to make sure that he avoids foul trouble. But then, you sprinkle in Bryson Tiller, you get the 3-point shooting, you get Darryn Peterson, then all of a sudden you start to see it. You start to see, hey, okay, this team can potentially, make a deep run once you get into February and March and even early April.
Yeah, and, the other thing about the 3-point shooting, and we talked about this in our preview show, a lot of times teams don't shoot well at Champions Classic. That's been something that's happened to KU several times. Michigan State went lights out in the opener, but it's a lot more miss than hit. And actually, you think about that 2016-2017 team that beat Duke at Madison Square Garden. You had Frank Mason. You had Devontae Graham. It was a team that shot 41% from 3 on the season. Do you know what they shot against Duke in that game that they won? 2 for 17 from 3. And so I also think that there's some of that as well. You're playing in an NBA arena against, really high level competition and all the things that go along with that. And so it's not super unusual for a team to not shoot well. The foul trouble that Dave mentions is going to be a huge thing, because this is a team I keep seeing everybody say, oh, they're not deep. They're not deep. It's not that they're not deep. It's that the guys, you can't have several guys at the same position get into foul trouble, right? Like if Flory goes out, you've got Bryson Tiller. Like that's coverage there, but it doesn't help if they're both in foul trouble. And then you also lose Trey White, who's like a 4, type guy. And so it's not that they don't have depth. It's that if you stack up fouls at the same position like that, that's when you start to look really thin. And so they really have to start staying down on pump fakes. That was something that was an issue in this one, and Flory really struggles with that. The other thing with Flory is he needs to stop picking up fouls away from the basket.
Yeah.
him jumping up to try and tip a ball and get a ball that far away from the basket, the turnover isn't worth the risk of him picking up a foul and being in a troublesome spot. And so I think
his second foul was exactly what you just described, where there's like 14 minutes left in the first half, and he's jumping up like 25 feet from the basket at the top of the key, trying to knock away a ball for a second foul. And it's like that you have to eliminate that, right? Like that needs to go away. I thought it was interesting. It seemed like I wasn't maybe this must have been part of the scouting report for Kansas, but Yeah, Cameron Boozer, they were falling for a lot of his fakes. They were really getting off the floor on some of his fakes, which was a little bit annoying to watch. And, truthfully, I wasn't really that impressed with Cameron Boozer tonight. Like
he definitely fouled Flory on Flory's dunk. Like, can we say that when he got posterized by Flory under the basket, he hacked Flory like hard and got no foul call. But I mean, I thought Boozer was fine for the circumstance and everything. I thought he did some really good things. He's an excellent passer. That's
the one thing.
Things. Yeah,
that's the one thing that I was impressed with. He did a really good job. Kansas was trying to double quickly in the first half, and Boozer made a couple really nice passes out of it pretty quickly, which is nice to see. But yeah, other than that, I really wasn't that impressed with him. Like, he's kind of just a plodding big man he's not super athletic. Like, I don't know. I did not come away impressed. Sorry.
No, you're good. I thought he was fine, especially considering the way that KU guarded him. I mean, to finish with 18, and I know some of them came late. I thought he moved the ball well. He obviously rebounded pretty well. He is more of an all-around guy like that. So I thought he was fine, but he definitely also got a friendly whistle on a lot of stuff, and there was no doubt that he got that treatment. It was a little bit of a shame that Darryn Peterson didn't get to play there and get the star whistle as well a little bit.
Yeah, no kidding.
But no, in all seriousness, I thought Boozer was pretty good. I think that when you look at the way that they utilize him, he's got some really good players around him. And as those guys kind of figure out how to play off of him, he's only going to be that much better, I think.
Yeah. We talked about rebounding as being one of the keys heading into this game. KU got out rebounded in total by 11 by Duke, but I don't know. There were points in the game where I felt like KU was doing a really pretty good job of rebounding, and then there were other points where they definitely struggled. There was another play, speaking of Cameron Boozer, where Bryson Tiller's got him boxed out, and Boozer, I thought, pretty clearly just kind of shoved him under the basket and got the rebound.
It was the Jamar Chase offensive pass interference.
Yeah, right? And it turned into an and one for Duke, and I was like, he pretty clearly just shoved him under the basket to get the rebound. So, like, that was a really frustrating one. But yeah, I mean, coming into this game, we talked about in the preview show, we knew that was going to be an issue for Kansas because it was an issue for Kansas against North Carolina, and Duke is actually bigger than North Carolina in terms of, their average starting lineup height. So that was going to be an issue. I thought Kansas did okay overall. I know some people were commenting on the fact that Trey White was leading him out for Kansas with 9. Tiller and Badunga both had 6 each. So yeah, you'd probably like to see Badunga and Tiller get a little bit more on the glass, especially in a game like this. But overall, I didn't think it was. I guess going into it, I thought that there was a possibility that the rebounding could be the reason why KU loses, and I don't feel like that was the reason why KU lost. So
well,
I guess
the one thing I will say is, when you had the sort of blocked shot on, you cut it to 3, and then I think Council blocks Boozer's shot, and that's technically an offensive rebound or whatever, and he winds up scoring. And does he get an and one there?
I know he got an and one on the other one. I know,
and then later on, when you had the play where KU actually got a stop and they kind of fumble the offensive rebound out of bounds, that leads to the big 3 that kind of put the game away for Duke. And so I would say overall, like, I'm there with you. I didn't watch it like watching the Carolina game. I was just like, oh my God, they're getting killed on the glass. And I didn't quite feel like it in this one, but there were definitely a few key ones that Kansas didn't collect that wound up, making a fairly big difference.
Yeah, and KU didn't turn the ball over much tonight, but it felt like when they did turn it over, they were ones that really hurt. There was one late in the second half where Tiller got the rebound and was trying to get it to Council, and he just threw it into the first row of the bench, which was really annoying. So they only ended up, I'm looking at the final score here, they only ended up with 8 turnovers in the box score, but it felt like there was several in there that were more impactful maybe than just the number would lead you to believe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also think, when you when you look at the fact that Kansas is going to have more ball handling out there, and I hate to keep saying when Peterson's there, By the way, Bill Self did talk about Darryn Peterson in his post-game thing, says that he's had kind of continued hamstring tightness. Also added that he didn't think it would be long before he comes back. You have a gap now between now and your next game. You've got an even bigger gap between now and the players era or whatever that's called. And so,
Yep.
I would expect, without me being there checking Darryn Peterson's hamstring right now, at least the way that it sounds, Nick, is we aren't going to have to wait too much longer to see Darryn Peterson back out there.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because Self had obviously kept saying it was like hamstring tightness kind of day to day. Then there was the weird comment after the Princeton game, like he was out for the immediate future, whatever the hell that means. And then the reporting today coming out from like Jeff Goodman before the game earlier today was hamstring strain. And that's the first time I've heard anybody use the term strain to describe the injury, right? It had always been tightness or whatever. And then it comes out that it actually is a strain. And that was something that hadn't really been that term hadn't been used to describe the injury yet, which I thought was noteworthy. And yeah, when you look at KU's schedule, as you mentioned, Kevin, you got a big gap till your next game where you go to Las Vegas to play in the Players era, where you're going to play Notre Dame Monday, Syracuse Tuesday, and then you're going to have another game either that Wednesday or on Thanksgiving Day. And then you have another gap until December 2nd when you play against UConn. So I'm almost now of the – yeah, Dave, I think, has a good response to this. The communication on the injury has been muddled at best. I would agree with that. Philip says, what grade is the strain? Philip, you should know by now that we're not doctors. We just play
hold on. Do strains have grades? I know sprains do, but this isn't a sprain. It's a strain.
You are going beyond my medical.
I could be wrong on that, but I think you have grades for sprains, but not necessarily for strains.
I have no idea. But the point being, I think
I'm married to a nurse, but that doesn't mean I know anything about this. So.
But the point being, to piggyback off what you were saying about Peterson is, I would almost say, okay, hey, you're going to go to Las Vegas. You're going to be playing 3 games in either 3 days or 4 days. I don't know that I necessarily love the idea of if he's not fully ready to go playing that much right over the course. So maybe you, if he's feeling okay, you get him out there for one of those games. Or honestly, I think if you want to be extra cautious, which Kansas has clearly been pretty cautious up to this point, just say, all right, you're done until December 2nd when KU plays UConn, right? Like that would, I think, might be a potential reasonable thing to offer, because then, you have a stretch of games where you play UConn and then you play Missouri and Kansas City and then you play at NC State. That's a 3-game stretch where you'd like to have Darryn Peterson fully ready to go for all 3 of those games, right? So that's maybe, I guess, kind of where I'm at with it. We'll obviously see how KU chooses to handle it. As you said, you do have a pretty big gap here before your Players era trip. But again, you're looking at playing 3 games in 3 or 4 days. So do you really want a guy coming off of a hamstring strain out there that much in that short period of time?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's not for me to say, I guess, as somebody who is not a doctor, only plays one on a podcast. So
yeah, I'm catching heat in the chat for not listening to my wife, which is fair. It's 100% fair. Guilty as charged. Yeah.
Listen to your wife more. Listen to your wife more.
Oh man.
We got to take one more
segment. I'm not showing her this.
We do have to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll share some final thoughts from tonight. Maybe look ahead a little bit to that Players era, which is KU's next game. And if you have any more questions in the chat, feel free to fire them off. We'll get to those as well. We'll take one more quick break, and then we'll be right back.
I'm Brett Goodwin, one of the owners of The Learning Tree. The Learning Tree is a neighborhood toy store in Prairie Village, Kansas. This has been here in this location since 2000s, and my husband Alan and I purchased the store in 2023. Alan and I grew up in families where we've always wanted to have a business together. Alan grew up, for instance, his parents had a jewelry store. I worked in a local toy store here in Prairie Village when I was growing up. When this opportunity happened in 2023, we knew right away we wanted to contact them and pursue the store. We wouldn't have been able to get the store without the team at Emprise Bank. From the day we contacted them, they knew what we needed to do, which was very helpful. I would absolutely recommend the team at Emprise Bank to anyone looking to secure a business. We worked with Emprise from day one. They were extremely helpful. They were always great resources. We talk to them frequently. They know the area. They're very friendly. We know who we're going to talk with, and they know what we need to do. We hope we'll see you at the Learning Tree.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition of the show on a Tuesday night following KU's game against Duke at the Champions Classic in Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, Kansas loses against the Blue Devils 78-66. KU's now 3-2 on the year. If you're joining us live, thank you so much once again, and feel free to continue to share comments. If you have any questions, let us know. We can get to those as well. You should be doing three things. You should be liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and also sharing that comment with us. If you're listening after the fact on audio, we thank you as well for tuning in there. You should be subscribing and also leaving us a 5-star rating and review. But I would highly encourage you to check out our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks, KCSN, and subscribe, because then you can join us live for our YouTube live shows. We're doing more of these, and we'll be live on Saturday following KU football's game against Iowa State. We'll be live on Saturday afternoon after that one, and we'll be live for more KU basketball games over the course of the season as well. Kevin, before we get to a couple people in the chat who have some questions, I think it's time for our weekly El Marco Jackson segment.
Okay.
I want to believe, I so desperately want to believe in El Marco Jackson and what he could potentially become for Kansas. But man, he's making it hard. Man, he makes it so tough, because it's just, I'm not seeing much progress at this point. So I am increasingly worried. He didn't end up playing that much tonight, mainly because I don't think KU could really afford to put him out there that much tonight. So I don't know. Walk me off the ledge again on Marco Jackson. I feel like we do this at least once a week, where I say that I want to believe in Marco Jackson, but I'm not seeing it, and then you have to talk me off the ledge. What do you have to say about that?
I'm not going to talk you off the ledge. I mean, the ledge is just that he didn't play a lot tonight, and I think that until he starts to play better, he's not going to play a lot. And the good thing about Self is, as much as people talk about Self's doghouse, like, people have pulled themselves out, when they haven't been playing well. But ultimately, it's up to El Marco Jackson at this point. But if he were playing better, then he would have played 15 minutes tonight, and instead he winds up playing 6. It felt like, and I'm not trying to be too harsh about this, it felt like it was 6 too many with how much he really struggled. And I think when you saw the rise and roll that Jaden Dawson had, and him getting out there in bigger moments, the ball is in El Marco's court at this point. And we like him, as a person. He's obviously come back from a really rough injury. He didn't play, over the last while. You hope that the game starts to slow back down for him. But as of right now, he's in a spot where it's going to be really hard for him to keep a spot in the rotation.
Well, and it's not even a doghouse thing. It's you said. He's just not playing well, and there's no.
I'm more meant that guys who have been buried have found ways to bury themselves with Self and within the rotation and all that.
Yeah. And again, it's an issue that takes more of a spotlight when you don't have Darryn Peterson, right? Sure. Like, if you have Darryn Peterson, I think it becomes less of a factor. But, in a game like this, it would have been nice maybe for him to provide something a little bit more, where you could get another guy in the rotation there. Somebody earlier in the comments had also mentioned Genu Ngala, who I think got out there just right at the end of the game. Maybe he didn't end up recording anything, but maybe, I guess, see what Ngala could potentially provide you as somebody off the bench. If El Marco is going to continue to trend in the wrong direction, maybe see what Ngala can offer you in terms of just an additional ball handler and a guy who could maybe hit a perimeter shot as well off the bench. But yeah, man, it's like I said, I like him so much as a player. I like him so much as a person. When the times we've gotten to speak to him, like, I think he's probably one of the leaders in the locker room, truthfully, from some of the comments that we've heard. And Bill Self always speaks glowingly about him when he gets the chance to. But man, you're just not seeing it. You're just not seeing it on the court at all. And so it's disappointing. So I'm gonna hold on to a little bit of hope that I can, but I'm losing that. Dave in the chat here asked, after this game, your biggest cause for concern and your biggest sign for hope, not named DP.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think biggest sign for concern is defending without fouling. I would say, because I think that this is a team that has the potential to be elite defensively. I've said that before, and I think I think that's where this team's bread needs to be buttered, is they need to be elite defensively. I think you saw stretches of that where they really made things hard for Duke at times tonight. They aren't there yet. It's early in the season. A lot of times it takes teams a while to kind of get their defensive flow down, and offenses have so many creative answers for how to deal with defenses now that you really have to lock in on that end. But I think as you look at it right now, when Kansas is defending, it hasn't been a consistent full game thing. Like I said, you would expect that to develop. Can they do that without committing fouls, without losing Flory for extended periods of time, without losing Bryson Tiller for extended periods of time? I think for me, that's the biggest concern. And since I did that, I'm going to ask you to actually give us some help, some hope, and say, other than Darryn Peterson, what is your biggest sign for hope in this one?
Yeah, I think it's probably Bryson Tiller being what he is. Like, it's very, very impressive what he's able to do. And if he continues to keep that up, like, that's, I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of, like, in the preseason, what was I expecting versus kind of what's transpired up to this point in the season. I was not expecting Tiller to be this impactful and this good right now, right? And so that gives me a lot of hope that if he continues to grow and build off that and beyond, I think all of a sudden now you're talking about a situation where Tiller becomes your sort of next go-to option, right? If it's Darryn Peterson and Flory Badunga, all of a sudden, like, between Tiller and Trey White, like, those are two seemingly really, really solid options as well, scoring wise. So that's what gives me a lot of hope, I think, is Tiller. And again, I talked about it earlier, but I also have hope, and I believe that both Jaden Dawson and Cole Rosario at some point are going to have some games where things are going to start to click for them from the perimeter. And I think that will really add for Kansas as well, in terms of, getting some extra scoring and providing a little bit more from the perimeter as well for Kansas. So those are, I think, the two areas where I have the biggest sign of hope. And again, with Tiller, it's more about, I just didn't expect him to be what he is right now on November 18th, right? Like, in my head, I was thinking, Bill Self speaks really glowingly about Bryson Tiller. Maybe eventually he'll become some of, like, that type of player. Well, I didn't expect him to do it on November 18th, and here he is. So I'm very happy about that, and hopefully that's only a sign that he can go even further. Dave in the chat asks, if anyone has seen him in person, is a G only like 5'5"? We saw Genu Ngala at KU Basketball Media Day. He's definitely taller than Diggy Coit, which I know is not saying a lot, but he's taller than Diggy Coit, I'm pretty sure.
He still qualifies for Nick Springer Short King, though, right?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. If you're the same height as me, or even just a little bit taller than me, you can qualify. You can qualify.
There you go. So yeah, another Short King. But no, in all seriousness too, I think early on, like very early on, people were worried about Flory. Like, oh man, did Flory not take the step that we all thought he should have? Even, early into the Princeton game, Nick, like, if you looked on Twitter, there are a bunch of people like, oh, Flory, it isn't worth whatever it took to get him back to Kansas. And I think my thing of optimism would be that Flory right now is playing like what we hoped Flory would play like. And so I think the confidence is going to be big. And I know you said, Peterson not a reason for optimism, but I would turn it kind of on its head and say, not necessarily, oh, you're getting Darryn Peterson back, that's the reason for optimism, but the fact that you're having guys step up like this right now, and then they're going to have more help later on. I think the guys who are playing right now and stepping up, like Trey White, like Flory Badunga, I think guys like that are a reason for optimism as you continue to move on, because this was a game that I think, Nick, very easily could have gone, quite frankly, the way that the Kentucky-Michigan State game went. And Kentucky is missing a guy or two. When you look at, I think the Low kid's missing, Jaden Quentin is out as well. In this one, they battled throughout. You're there, within 3 points in the final 5 minutes or whatever it is. it's not a moral victory. You had chances to win. You could have won with the team that was out there right now. But at the same time, I do think it's a reason for optimism that they were able to battle and scrap and everything with those guys.
Yeah, look, I hate losing to Duke. Like Duke just piss me off. They're annoying. I especially hate losing to Duke while also having to listen to Jay Billis on the call. Like generally speaking, I actually don't mind Jay Billis, but man, when he's doing Duke games, it's rough. It's rough if you're not a Duke person, which obviously we are not. Yeah, it sucks losing to Duke. I'm not happy about it. Kansas also has been really good in the Champions Classic since its inception. Bill Self Kansas had the best record of the Champions Classic prior to tonight. I think Duke has now leveled it out with them. I think now
they're tied.
Yeah,
Kansas
both are 9-6.
They're tied. Kansas is the only program that has a winning record against the other three programs in Champions Classic. By the way, I would not have guessed this, but I found it when I was looking at this earlier today. The one team that has a losing record against each of the other three teams is Kentucky.
Really? Because Michigan State has the worst record, I think, out of anybody.
I believe they are now tied at the bottom
with Kentucky. Okay,
but Michigan State is 3-2 with today's win against Kentucky. So
hey, if you ever want
Michigan State and won its series with Kentucky so far, Duke has won its series against Michigan State and Kentucky. KU is currently winning its series with all three of those schools within Champions Classic.
If you ever want a little bit of fun, I would encourage you to check out Rupp Rafters after Kentucky basketball loses. It is it's quite the interesting experience if you go do that. If you're ever looking for a little bit of fun reading after Kentucky loses games, check out Rupp Rafters. Sometimes they get a little bit crazy over there. We kind of talked about it earlier, but Kansas has a pretty decent sized gap before their next game. They're going to go to the Players Era next week, where they'll play against Notre Dame and Syracuse. Then the Players Era. I still fully don't understand it. They've got this weird like bracket, but then it's like they have a championship game, but there's so many teams in it that I don't really know how it fully works, to be quite honest with you. It's a bit confusing, but Kansas ends up with a really, really easy draw considering the circumstances with Notre Dame and Syracuse. When you think about the fact that you've got Tennessee, Creighton, St. John's, Auburn, Oregon, Alabama, Gonzaga, San Diego State. Those are some of the teams that are involved in this tournament. Out of the Big 12, you have Baylor and Iowa State and Houston also in this tournament. So you'll have a chance to see, 2 or 3 of the other top teams in the conference as well if you're interested in Feast Week basketball. Unfortunately, one of the negatives of the Players Era, and I guess of NIL, is that the sort of Thanksgiving week tournaments that you're used to watching are kind of dead now, which is kind of sad, I guess. There's no more like Maui. It's just not the same. Or some of those other tournaments. So that's, I guess, a little disappointing, but should still be fun, I think, for KU. And again, a fairly easy draw considering when you get Notre Dame and Syracuse, and then they'll play a third game against a to be determined opponent on that Wednesday or Thursday. And then again, like I said, then you have UConn, Missouri, and North Carolina State as your next 3 games. So as it pertains to Darryn Peterson, I would just say again, if KU wants to be cautious about it, which they've been cautious to this point, maybe just say, all right, don't even worry about the Players Era. Just get ready for UConn on December 2nd, and then that 3-game stretch with Missouri and North Carolina State. And hopefully, you're good to go for those 3 games, because then you're talking about, after that North Carolina State game, you're talking about 2 more games against Towson and Davidson, and then you're in conference play, right? And so there are really, I think at this stage, you want Darryn Peterson to get back for Kansas, to help Kansas win a couple of those non-conference games, but B, to just get him back up and fully ready to go once conference play starts.
By the way, Kansas will have a chance to have a winning record against ACC teams because of that Players Era tournament. You wind up losing to North Carolina and Duke, then you play Notre Dame, Syracuse, and end up your ACC trip 5 games against ACC teams in the non-con against NC State. So you do have a chance to turn this thing around against ACC competition.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you got to remind yourself that Notre Dame is in the ACC in basketball, because it doesn't because why not? Nothing makes sense as it is with conference alignment. So who cares? Notre Dame, ACC, whatever.
Hey, Michigan said they got to look at being independent this week.
Yeah,
granted, it doesn't matter because they said we'll look at it when the grant of rights ends, which is 2036. So
yeah, it's all a big headache for me. It's all a big headache for me. All right. Any final thoughts here, Kevin? We've been rambling for about an hour. It's almost 11:15 p.m. here on this Tuesday night. Any other closing statements from Kevin?
Yeah, but not about the game, actually. I just want to say thanks to all of you guys for coming out and spending tonight with us. We really enjoy doing the live shows with you after every football game, after big basketball games. And we started doing it last year. We weren't really sure what the reputation would be, what the reaction would be, excuse me. And just having you guys in here consistently and it's really built a great community, and we love that even when it's 11:15 at night and all of us have to work in the morning, we're still in here talking about Kansas sports, and I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, I think you can almost be sure that Kevin and I will go live after the KU UConn game on December 2nd. The Missouri game on December 7th is going to be a bit of an issue because there's a Chiefs game that day. And for those that don't know, I work with the Chiefs, so I'd have a little bit of responsibility there. So we'll see what we can do about the KU Missouri game, and maybe it might be like a later in the evening.
He's going to start at running back.
Honestly, put me out there, coach. Put me out there. So we'll go from there. But I think for the players era, you can be sure we'll be talking about it later in the week, probably previewing it over the weekend, and then we'll lead into that, talk about it, and then probably be live after that UConn game. We're also going to have a show coming out this week, probably tomorrow, talking KU and Iowa State on the football side, previewing that game, so you guys can check that out. And then we will be live after the KU Iowa State game on the football field on Saturday. After that game, we'll be live after the KU Utah game on Black Friday as well. So if you're tuckered out from Thanksgiving and you're kicked back in your recliner, whatever it may be, coming out with us on Black Friday. And then if KU does make a bowl game, I would expect we will be, having coverage of that as well. So it's a busy time of the year. So really appreciate those of you that hang out with us, that join us, that help us continue to grow this channel. I echo everything that Kevin said. Huge shout out to Dave, man. Dave is a real one, honestly. He is awesome. Shout out to Dave. Shout out to everybody else that's joined our live chat.
Appreciate the real MVPs.
Yes, exactly. Brad says, screw the Chiefs. Brad, honestly, I agree. I am sick and tired of their shit, okay?
Dang.
And I'm not happy with them either. So we should probably end the show before I say anything else too inflammatory regarding the Chiefs. That's going to do it for tonight's edition of the show here live. Once again, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us as well. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Until then, he's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. We'll see you soon. Later.